while body camera footage shows an officer saying this.
I don't smell any alcohol. I don't smell any alcohol.
A single mother with no family in Tennessee. It meant her son went into DCS custody for 9 weeks until a psychologist cleared her to regain custody.
I have a few videos on my channel discussing why you never take a field sobriety test. We have to understand that these tests are not designed to give the police officer a clear understanding if you are drunk or if you are not drunk. They're only designed to collect evidence against you at trial. And I know I've read comments where some people stated that, hey, I've taken a field sobriety test and I was let go. Lucky you, you're one of the few. All right, there's always an exception to the rule, but remember, the exception in no way compares to the rule. It's not as big. Field sobriety tests are only here to collect evidence against you at trial so you can be convicted. Some people are still learning this lesson, and in today's video, the most disturbing thing is this. We're going to look at a nurse who was arrested for DUI because she failed the field sobriety test. But get this, she wasn't driving. She was in the parking lot of a daycare picking up her son, and she was given a field sobriety test, and she was not on a public road. And of course, according to the officer, she failed and she was arrested. But there's a twist to this as well. And I also want to share my experience. I had this exact same experience as a police officer, but I learned a big lesson. Let's jump into this video first, and then we'll talk more here in a second.
You're under arrest for DUI, okay?
A Williamson County mother is arrested for DUI and felony child neglect. Her son in the back seat, taken away and placed in DCS custody for 9 weeks.
Well, Tracy Marius, it's important to say first, this Williamson County nurse was not arrested for how she was driving, rather because of her perceived behavior before she got behind the wheel in a parking lot. Now, what you are about to see is a real wake-up call about what could happen if you're suspected of driving drunk and you're sober.
She's just really off to me.
September 22nd, 2019, a concerned worker at a Williamson County daycare calls police about a mother's behavior.
She came in and was circling in here, scratching her head, talking to herself.
Before we go any further, I just want to say this really quickly. It's mind-blowing how the first thought of people now in today's world is to call the police rather than stop and ask this lady, hey, are you okay? You feeling okay? If she seemed off and she seemed like she wasn't herself, she could be having some type of traumatic situation, some family emergency, anything could be happening. But instead of asking her, are you okay? This daycare worker calls the police, which led to all this. Let's keep watching.
That mother, Katie Slayton, says it was her first day off after working 41 hours in 3 days as a nurse treating COVID patients. I've seen the videos, and you do look shaky.
Yeah.
You can understand why the officers might have had concern.
I think it's basically, fight or flight. It's my maternal instincts are going off.
Come on, Rambo.
Maternal instincts because her son was running on the sidewalk
Come on, buddy.
and got upset when police took him inside the daycare as she underwent the field sobriety test.
I just realized, they're taking control of my son, and at that point, I start shaking.
While body camera footage shows an officer saying this.
I don't smell any alcohol. I don't smell any alcohol.
Her performance on the test resulted in an arrest.
You're under arrest for DUI.
What?
Yes, ma'am.
And not just DUI, felony child neglect.
As a police officer, I had this same exact situation. I was 1066 at a Walmart. And what 1066 means, at least for our 10 codes, was that I was out on foot patrol walking around. And I came across an individual. He was heavily intoxicated. He was walking towards his vehicle, his truck, with his keys in his hand. He was about to get into this truck and he was about to drive away. So I go over, I talk to him, and I do what I believe was a proper investigation. And I arrive at the point where, okay, I'm going to place you under arrest because you are DUI. Why was I going to arrest this guy? Because he drove to the Walmart and he was wasted while driving to the Walmart. My lieutenant arrives on scene because I radio out for backup. My lieutenant comes over and he goes, let me ask you a question. Did you see that guy drive here? No, sir. What? I know he drove here because that's his truck. He has his keys. He's about to drive away. But did you see him drive here? Now my brain's like, uh-oh, no, I did not see him drive here. Now the question became, what if someone drove him here and that person's still in the store? Who knows? Maybe they had a headbutt fight, whatever. He's just going to leave the person. He's mad. He's leaving. It doesn't mean he drove here. It's so many different ways you can paint this picture. It could be so many different scenarios. You can't go off of what you think. You have to go off of what you know. And you don't know if he drove here. As simple as my lieutenant made that scene, I learned a valuable lesson. I learned how to start really thinking and do proper investigations. As a young officer, not long out of the academy, I'm thinking I'm doing things the right way, but I'm not. I could have placed that guy under arrest. We could have found out later that he did not drive to that location. There was someone else, or heck, who knows? He could have went inside of the store and bought some beers. There was like a little sitting area on the side of the store where a lot of people, it's like a shade tree. It was for employees, but anybody would be over there. He could have went and bought some beers, went over there and just started drinking them and got wasted. And now he's going to the vehicle, to the truck to drive away. I don't know if he was wasted when he got there. I don't know if he even drove there. So now the point of this story is this. My lieutenant taught me how to look at things from several different angles to make sure you're making the right call. This woman is at a daycare, and I'm not saying she did not drive there, but as we continue to watch and as we've seen so far, these officers don't really have enough to place this woman under arrest for DUI, but yet and still she does. Their investigation was not strong enough. And this is the problem with policing. This was the problem with myself when I came out of the academy. Thankfully, I continued to learn, and I wanted to learn, and I continued to research and read the laws and try and figure out how to become a better police officer. This is what it takes. If not, we look at situations like these where you destroy someone's life to the point where their children are being taken away from them. Let's keep watching. You'll see what I mean.
A single mother with no family in Tennessee. It meant her son went into DCS custody for 9 weeks until a psychologist cleared her to regain custody.
There was nothing I could do at that point. I felt completely powerless.
It would ultimately take 6 months to get the blood test back, showing she was completely sober at the time. The charges dropped.
Just seeing myself charged with that, it was just horrifying to me.
But there's something else in that blood test, showing she tested positive for amphetamine, taken according to an evaluation by a psychologist for ADHD, a complex brain disorder that, if untreated, can make following directions difficult.
Now, at this point, some of you guys may be like, well, she had amphetamines. Well, yes, she took amphetamines for ADD. So with that being stated, she had taken her dose earlier that morning, which the test results showed. She was at a level where she could actually drive. Her stresses did not come, or her stress and the failure of the test did not come from the amphetamine. It came from the stress of actually being field sobriety tested and watching your son being taken away. I have several videos where people fail field sobriety tests from several different reasons, and they're under the influence of nothing at all. This is why I always advise people, never take a field sobriety test. It is not there to help you. You're not going to prove your point that you're not under the influence. I don't care what other viewer or what other person tells you, hey, I took it and I passed. They were lucky. The test was not designed for that. It's only designed to collect evidence. And as we see, this woman, the evidence was collected. It showed, although the officer stated, I don't smell any alcohol. 6 months later, the test shows that, hey, she was actually sober. There's nothing going on with this lady. She was still arrested. She was still charged, had a charge that lingered for 6 months, and her child was still taken away for 9 weeks. Just imagine that. Your child is in someone else's custody, and when they go to bed at night, you can't see them. They can't see you. You have no clue of what's happening with your child for 9 weeks. That's a long time, but let's keep watching.
Left foot on the line, right foot in front of it.
In fact, other attorneys across the country point out the possibility of untreated ADHD on their websites, including how can ADHD be confused for a DUI? But ADHD specialist Dr. Ari Tuckman says if someone is properly medicated, their ADHD shouldn't play a factor in a field sobriety test.
It's certainly possible that ADHD could add, to the difficulties they might have compared to anybody else. That could be true. I still think that the most of it is just the stress that anybody would experience.
And remember, Slayton was treated for ADHD and on her medication. And she tells the officers.
She's been taking Adderall. She has, I guess, ADD.
Are you sure you took your medication this morning? You didn't take it any time past then?
And she was still arrested. You ultimately have someone who was sober arrested for a DUI. WSMV4 Investigates repeatedly emailed and called Franklin police for an interview, but the chief denied that request, noting in an email that the Williamson County magistrate found probable cause to support charges and warrants were obtained. Due to potential litigation, the Franklin Police Department will not be able to comment further.
It did show positive for her prescribed medication, but they were very much within therapeutic levels.
So as you guys saw, she was arrested. She was charged for a DUI. Even though she was sober, her child was taken away for 9 weeks. She ultimately ended up moving out of the state. The charges were dropped. I've tried searching to see if I could find the information about the lawsuit, if one was ever filed. I can't find any records of a lawsuit being filed. Listening to more of what she stated, and the link is down below. It just sounds like she just wanted to get away. She didn't follow up. She just wanted to get away and just get away from this terrible incident that happened to her, unfortunately. Remember, field sobriety tests, they are not meant to help you. They're not going to prove your case. They're only going to collect information against you. And I know I said this 100 times already, but I don't care what anybody else said who stated that, hey, I took a field sobriety test and I passed. Lucky them. You might not be that lucky. The chances are you're not going to be that lucky. So don't take a field sobriety test. I'll say this in ending. If you're stopped and suspected of a DUI, you don't take the field sobriety test. Now, in certain states, I want to be clear with this. The chemical test, if you refuse that in certain states, your license could and most likely will be taken away for refusal of that, because most people sign an agreement with the state that they will yield to a chemical test if stopped or requested by law enforcement. But a field sobriety test is not the same thing. So if you're stopped and you're suspected of DUI, don't take the field sobriety test, because if you're not under the influence and if you don't have good balance, then that's just more evidence. And if they're going to do chemical tests, most likely whether you feel you passed or failed, you're going to get the chemical test anyway. So don't give them more evidence to hold against you and give yourself more of a chance to be falsely convicted of something that you did not do. Make sure you know your rights, know the laws, always report the police. With that being said, we the People University, signing off.